obviously to interact. Here we go. So we just have to acknowledge that we got this, and I have to do this as well. If you want to ask questions, there will be an opportunity to ask Kristina and the panel questions about the report and their work and their ways of working. Feel free to put that in the chat. We will keep an eye on the chat and pull out the questions so that by the end of the session, I will hopefully be able to pose those to the panel. And apart from this, please remember to be respectful to everybody else on this call. We will share the Europeana's code of conduct in the chat, which outlines the kind of fundamental behaviors we ask you to adhere to during this event. There's nothing unusual. There's nothing that's going to be of any, that's going to come as a surprise. We're basically just asking people to be nice and kind to each other, which should go without saying, but it's quite useful to repeat that and reiterate it. That's it in terms of the housekeeping for today. It's now my pleasure to welcome Margherita Sani from the Network of European Museum Organizations, who is going to give us a brief overview of NEMO and also of the Europeana education community, to give us a bit of context about how this report came about. To give you a bit of context about Margherita and who she is a project coordinator at NEMO. She is adjunct professor at the University of Bologna, and she's worked in the museum department of the Institute for Cultural Heritage of the Emilia-Romagna region from 1985 to 2001. She is also a very active member of international museum associations and networks, including ICOM, GEM, which is the Group for Education in Museums, the European Museum Academy, and NEMO. From 2010 to 2019, she was a member of the NEMO Executive Board, and she currently coordinates NEMO's working group on education, which is called LEM, The Learning Museum is the official title. Since 2019, she's been a member of the board of Europeana Education, and since December 2022 of the executive board of ICOM Italy. So I think it's fair to say Margherita is very, very, very active in all sorts of areas. And we are very happy that she's found the time to give us a bit of context about how this report came about and what NEMO and Europeana Education are about. Margherita, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Oops. Just a second. To go back to the first slide of this very, very short introduction to the two organizations I'm representing here this afternoon. And Europeana Education and NEMO were the two partners that made this event possible, along with All Digital, which we warmly thank for hosting us this afternoon. So I'm pretty sure that everyone knows Europeana, which is an initiative of the European Union, and is mostly known for its portal, for Europeana EU, the platform for cultural heritage, where you can find, and I'm sure you've browsed through this already, more than 50 million digitized objects, and for a great part being free of credit. So you can use them without a license. They are either in the public domain or in Creative Commons. And of course, this contributes to make Europeana, they contribute to the mission of Europeana of making culture more accessible and reusable for all. And this is also very important in the educational context. Europeana harvests content from thousands of institutions, mainly from Europe, through its network of 40 accredited aggregators. But of course, behind these organizations, there are lots of people, individuals, professionals, passionate people that advocate to open up the collections of their institutions and democratize the access to culture. And these professionals are organized in the Europeana Network Association, which currently has more than 3,000 members. And of course, everyone who is interested in digital technologies can join. This is the webpage of Europeana Education. So within Europeana Education, we have tried in the last years to establish alliances with relevant partners like NEMO, for instance, also to open up the community, which mostly represents teachers, so educators in the school context, to educators working in cultural heritage contexts and in museums. And so this is how this collaboration came about, and this is why the two organizations met, also to survey training needs of educators in both sectors. And the other organization I'm representing here, as it was mentioned, is NEMO, which is the Network of European Museum Organizations. It was founded in 1992, and it's the network that represents museums at European level. It currently has members for more than 40 European countries, so countries belonging to the Council of Europe area, and speaks for over 30,000 museums across Europe. The main activities of NEMO are those of advocating for museums at EU level, providing training opportunities, providing a platform for museums to exchange and learn from each other, and helping museums to cooperate across borders. NEMO has 4 working groups: advocacy and public affairs, digital transformation, sustainability and climate action, and as Lisa was mentioning, the LEM working group. The LEM working group was established in 2014, and it's about museum education. You can find everything about this working group on the website, on the NEMO's website, including all the publications that have been produced over the years, also the webinars that were delivered. Everything is free for anyone, so it is accessible to anyone. These are some of the activities that we organize in NEMO. And this year, or last year actually, was published at the end, made public, so made available at the beginning of 2023, but actually produced in 2022. The report, the 2022 report, is the one that we are presenting this afternoon. So it's Digital Learning and Education in Museums. And I would really like to praise here the 2 authors, most of all, Kristina Barekyan, who collected the case studies and described it in such an interesting way, and Lisa Peter, who contributed with the chapter on Europeana. So now I leave the floor to Lisa or to Kristina, but anyone, to one of the two. So I stop here, and I thank you very much for having invited me this afternoon.
You are mute, Lisa. Lisa, can hear you.
Thank you. Classical error on Zoom. Has never happened before that the chair has forgotten to unmute herself. I'll say that again, shan't I? So thank you so much, Margherita, for giving us a background to Europeana and to NEMO. If anyone is interested in digital cultural heritage, these 2 are really great networks to get involved in. If you are looking to network with colleagues all across Europe, if you are looking to pick other people's brains or just find out what's going on elsewhere, I can wholeheartedly recommend. They're not only immensely useful, but also full of really, really lovely people. Which is obviously one of the reasons we do collaborate. We want to find similar-minded people working on similar challenges, and this is just a fantastic opportunity to meet them either through Europeana or NEMO, or perhaps both. Right, so I hope you're all seated comfortably, perhaps with a hot beverage of your choice to hand, ready to hear from our presenters, as I'm now handing over to Kristina Barekyan, who is the main author of the report into digital learning and education in museums, and she's going to give you a bit of an insight into what the report is actually about. First of all, a bit about Kristina. She is a cultural professional with experience in quite a lot of things, in museum management, international relations, research, and digitalization. And she's particularly interested in how emerging technologies can be used to improve public access to arts and culture. Prior to her work on this report, she has conducted research on the intersection of museum learning and digital innovations, together with NEMO, which was supported by the German Chancellor Fellowship of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. Her past work has involved collaborating with a number of cultural heritage institutions, including Documenta, Museum Fridericianum, the V&A, the State Pushkin Museum of Fine Arts, Berlin State Museums, and MoMA. Kristina has been everywhere and spoken to everybody. So she was absolutely fantastically placed to pull all of these case studies together. Kristina, if you want to take it away and tell people what the lovely report is about.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, all Digital Summit, all Digital Weeks, and Europeana and NEMO and the working group LEAM for giving us the space for this presentation and for giving us this absolutely fantastic opportunity to talk about digital learning and innovations in museums. And Lisa, thank you again for not just being a moderator, but also a contributor and author of this publication. And also thank you for your editing, for an absolutely fantastic work. And of course, I'm very grateful to our speakers who have found time today to join us. I know how difficult it can be to find an hour within a working day. And thank you to all the attendees for joining us today. I would like to start with a short prehistory of this publication, which is a kind of personal history. My work on this publication was preceded by my research residency at NEMO, which was supported by the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, by the German Chancellor Fellowship in 2020-21, so basically in the midst of pandemic. In the framework of the project, I was investigating digital engagement, lifelong learning, and mediation in German museums. And I discovered a lot of digital initiatives that have been developed during the pandemic time or before it. I conducted a lot of interviews with museum professionals. And so when Margarita invited me to work on this publication, on the publication about digital learning and innovations, I already knew that I will basically continue my work, but not to look just in German museums, to look more broadly at European institutions. And I also thought that it would be really great to talk not just to museums professionals, but also to hear from the digital experts and to talk with representatives from the startups, tech companies, which work with museums together on delivering the digital projects and developing the services or applications together with museums. And in this publication, I've collected 15 case studies, which are based on in-depth interviews with museums professionals and also with experts from the digital side. The interviews took place between April 2022 and March 2023. We were discussing with interviewers the concepts of the projects, background information, objectives, challenges, and obstacles, and also learning benefits of the projects. And what also very important, the major takeaways of the professionals, and finally the recommendations for other museum professionals. In this publication, I look at digital learning in a very broad sense. I would say not focusing solely on formal educational projects or on projects where we initially had a learning outcome as a final goal, but other projects where we maybe learn unintentionally, for example, chatbot or a game. The collection of these case studies is supplemented by 4 expert interviews and followed by major takeaways and recommendations for cultural professionals interested in fostering digital engagement, learning, and education in the cultural heritage sector. And as for education, I mainly refer to it in the context of formal educational initiatives. So we have learning and education in the title. Additionally, the publication includes an article by Lisa Petter. Lisa demonstrates how open access collections can help support museums in the development of online resources and learning scenarios. Lisa is using the example of Europeana's educational activities. And I also want to add that Europeana is a great and huge hub of knowledge about open data and open access, especially for institutions which want to start with opening access to their collections and maybe don't know where to start with. So overall, open access to digitized collections, which makes digital collections in the public domain available for unrestricted use without financial or legal barriers, significantly enhances the potential of digital heritage for education, learning, and research. The first chapter of the publication ties in with the article by Lisa. It's dedicated to the educational opportunities of digitized museum collections and open access, creative reuse of data, and, for example, as in case of hackathons or citizen co-curation. And moreover, it includes an interview with one of the main advocates of opening museum access to open museum data, Merete Sanderhol from the National Gallery of Denmark. It also includes 4 case studies, and I would like to highlight just a couple of them. The report includes around 106 pages, so I invite everyone to get acquainted with these case studies by your own. And I will show just a couple of them. I intentionally skipped the case studies for which we have our speakers today and let them talk about their projects. And on the screen, you see the image from the case study, very special one, I would say. In this case studies, we can see how digitized museums collections can be used to engage the most vulnerable groups. And this project, a group of young people, young boys from Oberstone Children Detention Campus in Ireland, work together with Adam Stoneman, who I hope today is here with us among the attendees. So this detention house is a detention facility with high security, which cannot be left by these young boys. And in this project, Adam Stoneman works together with the boys on the exhibition. The boys use the web application Deep Points, which allows them to select and interpret digitized works from the collection of Irish Museum of Modern Arts. And in the process of work, they acquire knowledge about arts, about exhibitions, and about museums. And finally, at the end of the project, this exhibition, which you can see on the screen, was developed and was opened in the Irish Museum of Modern Art. I really like this project. It was a very interesting conversation with Adam. I would say very personal. It was quite a challenging project emotionally, and I do invite you to read these case studies thoroughly. And then in the second chapter, we talk about learning formats related to social media and the expansion of museums into virtual environments like augmented reality, virtual reality, or metaverse, for example. Several projects in this chapter discover the opportunities of metaverse, and I'm really happy that we have today Johanna Iramo from the National Gallery of Finland, who will tell us more about the potential of the metaverse platforms for museums, and will tell us about the project Finnish Meta Gallery, the collaboration with the Decentraland Metaverse. And we have in this chapter an interview with the head of digital at the National Gallery in London, Lawrence Chiles, who shares his experience of bringing the National Gallery to the different spaces, as he expressed himself through the digital game Keeper of Counsel. It's a really lovely game, which I played many times already, although it's a game for children, but it's a very interesting experience. You can discover the collection of the National Gallery to solve some tasks. It's all done on the Roblox Metaverse platform. That's one of the biggest metaverse platforms, gaming metaverse platforms. So in this case study, you can also discover what can be done in the metaverse in terms of digital learning and digital mediation. And the next section of the publication revolves around digital communication and chatbots. It will explore 2 different conversational formats aimed at mediation of museum narratives and collections. And luckily today we have with us Marion Carré from Ask Mona, a big expert in AI chatbots. And Marion will tell us more about the potential of AI chatbots for museums. But I want to show you my own experiment, which I conducted with an AI chatbot, ChatGPT, which I guess many of you already know or maybe even tested it in work. This is an AI chatbot which was launched in November 2022. And basically you can ask any question in this application and to get an answer, which is based on the data which the ChatGPT has in its data set. And here I fantasize that we can talk to museums objects. I think that to me, at least this idea was always very appealing, maybe to some of you as well. Just imagine you come, you visit a museum and you can ask a question to your favorite museum objects. And I use the ChatGPT to imitate the conversation with one of my favorite museum objects, the sculptural bust of Nefertiti from the Neues Museum. There is a debate among art historians whether this sculpture was intended as a standalone artwork, so basically as a finished artwork, or it was a model for a bigger sculptural group. And I imagine that I asked this question to Nefertiti directly to the museum object, but basically I asked this question to ChatGPT. ChatGPT, let us imagine that you are the sculpture bust of Nefertiti in the collection of the Neues Museum. Could you please answer a question? Then I answer a question and I get 3 regenerations. Like you have this option of regeneration and answer. And in the first answer, ChatGPT answers on behalf of the museum object and says that it's a standalone sculpture, which is not really corresponding the official discourse, the official opinion of the National Gallery of the Museum, of the Neues Museum. And then the second answer is already giving this critical perspective and informs me that there is a debate among scholars and there are different arguments supporting each point of view, which is closer to the official opinion of the professionals from the Neues Museum. You can read all of the answers in the publication. They're just short parts from this. But I would say that I was very satisfied with this experiment. And I think that it also had a lot of factual data, like dates and the names. And for art historians, for me as an art historian, it was very, I would say, professionally done. So I believe that AI chatbots can be a great instrument for museum mediation and engaging diverse audiences. And then in the last chapter, I focus on digital games and playful learning. I look at 3 games and I'm bringing as an example one game. You can see the screenshot from the game Prism 7, which was developed by the Pompidou Center together with the gaming studio Game Society. And in this game, you can develop the collection of the Pompidou Center. You can learn about different concepts related to art history, like shape, form, or lines. And it's a very aesthetically very beautiful game. I have it on my phone. You can play it on your web application. I mean, I played all the games which I'm looking at and tested all the applications from the publication. And this game also has a kind of learning scenario for children, for French schools. So it can be used at schools, at art history lessons. And finally, I would like to present a couple of recommendations and insights from report, the final parts of the publication. Don't start a digital project just because of the technology. No digital for the sake of the digital. And its recommendations is accompanied with the quotes from our interviewers. And then the concept and the story take priority. This is something which I heard for maybe most of the times, that the priority is the history, the concept of the projects. That's the most important. Technology shouldn't be prioritized just for the sake of technology. And then when thinking about digital projects, museums should be guided from the beginning by the principles of sustainability, which means that we have to plan the projects from the very beginning very carefully to think about budget, about the implementation phase, and also about evaluation. It is very important to collaborate, to share the resources and to share the knowledge. And open source solutions and reuse of digital mediations projects also could be very beneficial when we work on digital projects. It is not necessary to invent every time a wheel from new. And of course, be aware of the environmental footprint of digital technologies. And the last, museums and digital professionals might speak different languages. That's a quote from Brett, who we have today as a speaker. They might have difficulties understanding each other because of differences in the working cultures, because of different understanding and vision of digital processes. And this is also a challenge which I was coming across for many times while talking to museum professionals and also digital professionals. And what can be done? Communication, trust, and expectation managements are crucial for successful partnerships between museums and digital agencies. It is very important to keep communication flowing, be transparent, and provide regular feedback. Thank you so much. I invite everyone to download the publication and to read about all of the case studies and the projects. And I hope that recommendations and insights from the publication will be useful for those who are looking for new formats of engagement with digital visitors. Thanks.
Thank you, Kristina. There's certainly a lot of very useful information in this report. So we've put the link to the report into the chat if you would like to download a copy, read later. As we said, please do. Or if you think this would be really useful for some of your colleagues in the sector, pass it on. It is freely available, and the more people read it, the happier Kristina and I are, and I think Margarita and Europeana Education are too. If you already have questions for Kristina, please feel free to put them in the chat. We can refer back to them for the question session after the panel discussion. And we would now like to open up the conversation to the professionals who have kindly agreed to join us today. Instead of me introducing them by reading their short biography, I thought it might be great to actually hear from them themselves. So very quickly, I am going to ask our experts today who they are, where they work, and whether they can sum up the project that features in the report in one sentence for the audience. I am very aware I'm giving them a really proper challenge here. Marion, could I perhaps ask you to introduce yourself and your project first?
Okay, so the version in one sentence is that I'm Marion Carré from Paris, and I am co-founder of CEO of Ask Mona, and I'm going to tell more about it after. And I'm also an expert about art and artificial intelligence, which I'm studying since several years now.
Wonderful, thank you so much. It's a really fascinating project to have an AI chatbot to basically interact with your audiences. John Clancy, do we already have you on the call? Because I know you had some technical difficulties to overcome. Are you with us?
Yeah, I am with you. I'm on my phone. We got there in the end.
Excellent.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Glancy. I am currently the section head for digital learning at the under construction Zayed National Museum in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. This project pertains to my time as the executive producer for schools and families at Imperial War Museums. And to sum up this project in a sentence, I managed to bring the Merlin engine from inside a Spitfire into classrooms without any oil stains or the need for a 200-page risk assessment.
Excellent. I think anything that removes the need for a risk assessment is to be applauded, John. Thank you so much. Brett, oh, sorry, Kristina.
Yeah, sorry for this, Joan. I guess it was a mistake from the conference side. It's great that you're with us.
We got there in the end.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Brett, would you come onto the call and tell us who you are, Brett Volker?
Yes, sure. Good timing, Lisa. Hi, everyone. Brett Volker. I am based in New York City, but a native of Australia. For the last 10 years, 11 years, I've been running a business I founded called Ada Experience Design. So we work with a lot of technology companies, and the whole thesis for that business was to look at how emerging technologies were going to help people in the cultural space create and also consume different forms of art, essentially. So it was very wide-ranging. We worked with everything from incredible musicians like Brian Eno and Bjork, through to people like the Greek government, which is the project we're talking about today. And this project was a partnership between Microsoft, the office of Brad Smith in particular, who has a program they were calling AI for Cultural and Heritage, and the Greek government, in particular the Hellenic Ministry for Culture and Sport. And this project was really about, came from a conversation between Brad Smith and the Prime Minister of Greece, and it was really about looking at how technology could preserve and educate historic sites like the ancient site of Olympia, and present what it meant to the world and what it looked like back then, because of course today it's mostly in ruin. So that's me, and that's a quick intro on the project.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brett. And last but not least, Johanna, would you like to share your project with us and also who you are?
Oh, for sure. And it's a nice narrative going from ancient Greece to 1900 Paris. We recreated the Finnish World Expo Pavilion in Paris 1900 and put in some art from our collections. Oh, and I forgot to say, hi, I'm Johanna Eromo, and I'm from the Finnish Digital National Gallery program. I've had this position since June last year. And yes, so we wanted to set up the Finnish Pavilion from 1900 in Decentraland, which is a virtual reality world which runs on blockchain. And yeah, so we wanted to show some of our art, give some of the visitors the possibility to change what they see on the walls, which is something that you can't do in the museums for the time being, at least. We also had a blockchain based voting to see what people wanted to see next. So we've been experimenting on how virtual realities work, how the people who go to Decentraland, are they interested in art? Are they interested in voting? And how it all looks. So yeah, it's been a wonderful trip up so far. The Meta Gallery is there until the end of May this year.
Thank you so much, Johanna. As you can see, we have got quite a range of organizations and projects on the panel today, ranging from large cultural institutions to startup businesses. But having said that, there's quite a few aspects of collaborating on digital projects and digital learning projects, educational projects, that probably all of you share. So I thought it might be really useful to have a look at some of the things we all have in common, no matter from where we're actually approaching these projects from. So while we're doing this, just a little reminder to the audience, if you have any questions to our panel already, put the questions in the chat, and the team at the back end of this will pick it up, and we can hopefully ask some of those to the panel in a moment. But just to get us started, what are your experience, and I'm talking to all of the four people on the panel, what in your experience are the biggest challenges around innovative technologies when we're looking at digital learning and museum education and all of these quite specific sectors? Marion, would you like to come first on that?
Yes, with pleasure. Just maybe to tell a few words about the Musée des Augustins project, because I've been following the assignments of one sentence, but maybe you want to know a little bit more. So this project was for the Musée des Augustins, which is the fine arts museum of the city of Toulouse, which is one of the major cities in France. And we helped them during a challenging time for museum, which is the closure of the museum for renovation during several years. And what we did for them is that we created a chatbot available on their website that has two different goals. The first one was to raise public awareness around the renovation work. And the second one was to keep the link with the visitors, even if the museum was closed. And I think this approach is really interesting because they consider visitors not only as people coming into the museum, but as a wider community to keep in touch with. And I think my follow-up is on what you mentioned, Kristina, from Ghislaine. I think it's really we live at a moment where there are so much technology available and available easily, and even more with artificial intelligence. So I think it's really important to think first about the goal, what do we want to achieve, and then about the technology. So that would be my first feedback on that.
Thank you so much, Marion. Yes, definitely. It's always good to keep in mind what you're trying to achieve, not which tool you're going to use for that. John, any ideas about the challenges around innovative technologies that you would like to highlight from your point?
Yeah, so obviously this was a project I did when I was working for Imperial War Museums, and we worked very closely with a Thai deep tech company, Perception Codes, and they very much created this Hollow Museum platform. So I guess the challenges are, who were a fantastic partner, by the way. I don't know if they're on the call today, but I have nothing but nice things to say about them. However, what the challenges around digital innovation are very much the same challenges we will face on anything. And I think there's I'm going to be a bit kind of cute with the way that I answer this question. So it's time, it's money, it's resource. Okay. Fundamentally, that's what your challenge is. Now, the interesting thing is one of the other challenges that we kind of ring fence digital. And we kind of make it to be this sort of scary specialism. And some museums will back away from that, going, well, we don't know how to do any of that. We just know how to put things into showcases. That's part of the challenge as well, because we're not seeing it yet as just another aspect of public programming. In the same way that we would see the fact that we have electric lights in galleries, and the fact that we might have an AV screen or some form of kind of physical interactive. These are all kind of emerging technologies that have evolved over the last century or so. So we should actually be treating digital in that way of it is just another tool for engagement, as opposed to being this big scary thing that only certain people can do. I am the least techie person in the world, but I've managed to have quite a few successes in the digital learning frame because I treat it like any other programming, albeit I work with different collaborators who are smarter in some ways than, say, someone who can physically create something. So I think that we need to be now thinking about it in the same way that we think about anything, which in some ways means that it's, same old story of time, money, and resource. Excellent.
Thank you so much, John. Really good to hear that, the project management element of it is, is pretty much the same. And I fully agree that, putting it in a special corner is sometimes not the most helpful as, just thinking of it in the digital corner, because we all learned how to write at some point, and that's also technology. Okay, moving on. Johanna, would you like to tell us some of the challenges you've probably encountered, or anything you would like to add to what Marion and John have already referred to?
For sure, timing and money is of the essence. And actually, there's a really good question that speaks to this. Dominique from the English Heritage in the UK. And absolutely agree with John that we need to think of technology as something in addition to everything that we do already. I think one of the challenges for sure is in-house knowledge of technology and what it can enable. And in that respect, for the meta galleries, or for the next session that we're doing, which is community building, we were able to hire a new person who actually understands blockchains, the actual technology of blockchains, a critical recruitment for the next year and a half. And he then knows what to buy from outside the museum, but you need that knowledge inside. He now understands what it is that we're trying to do, and he can then go out and find the technology partners that we need for the next stage. So I think not so much of a problem, but I mean, recruitment is difficult for all of us because of funding. So we received external funding from our Ministry of Culture and Education for that.
That's a really good point, Johanna, because I can imagine there's quite a few techie people on the call as well. So if you're looking for a job and you're interested in the cultural heritage sector as well, just keep that in mind, that there will be more and more crossover positions coming up where, both of these interests and both of these skill sets together are immensely valuable for organizations. So that's always worth keeping in mind. Last but not least, Brett, what are your challenges that you've experienced or that you would like to share?
Sure, yeah. I think you're going to pick up a couple of common themes here between what all of us say. Of course, budget and resources is what I'm talking to. But I think my biggest sort of tip as it pertains to the Olympia project is really, and this is it goes much more broadly, I think, is to really double down on information sharing and expectation setting from the very beginning of any project like this, especially if your colleagues or your peers are further advanced in their careers. You know, the younger generations today are just so digitally native and have different expectations of things like fidelity and quality. But you know, technology can do wonderful things. It also has many limitations. So things like budget, accessibility on various levels, and timings are going to significantly impact the quality and the fidelity, again, of the experience that you deliver. So using Olympia as an example, the partner was the Greek government, the Ministry of Culture and Sport, as I mentioned. It was super important to them that they were historically very accurate. And it was also very important that it was accessible to as many people around the world as possible. So in this case, I'm talking about accessibility as in people in many countries with different bandwidths, with different levels of hardware, maybe not access to mobile phones. It was something the Greek government wanted to do for the world to promote its rich history and, you know, the birthplace of democracy. The trade-off for being able to do that is that we weren't developing assets within gaming engine like fidelity, which require lots of pixels, lots of bandwidth, and therefore wouldn't be accessible to many people. So, you know, if you compare some of the assets we created, they are very accurate. And it was wonderful working with the archaeologists and historians and the great respect for what they do. But there was a knowledge gap between understanding what the impact of that level of accuracy within the mediums they wanted to present it would be. So I think that's a huge thing. I mean, we could have designed that experience to be much more high fidelity, much richer. It could have gone into game engines. It wouldn't have been as available to as many people worldwide, and it would not have been as accurate. And sometimes the tensions that we felt were, you know, because you're talking about monuments that are 3,000 years old, you know, accurate is sometimes a matter of opinion that experts will disagree on. So where's the middle ground that makes sure that it is a premium experience, that younger audiences are really going to enjoy it and get what they expect, but it's also accurate from an educational perspective. So again, I just laboring the point to come back to at the very start, spend the time sitting around making sure everyone at the table understands the opportunities and the limitations with the technology and what certain decisions about audiences are going to have on the final product.
Excellent, thank you. We've got Johanna and Marion who would like to come in on this one, and then we have to move on to the next question, I'm afraid. So Johanna.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I'll just be super quick and add to Brett's excellent comment that then marketing money is also needed. You might build the most beautiful piece of technologically and economically accessible cultural heritage, and then people don't know about it because you forgot to add money to marketing and communications. Super critical.
Yeah, I agree.
Excellent, thank you. Marion. Oh, I think you're still on mute.
The last thing, based on what you say, with the importance of having clear expectations, I think there is also something interesting in the startup mindset to keep for this kind of project, which is to start with a limited frame or size of the project and then build step by step, because a lot of times we work with hundreds of institutions and people want to do something big right now, and it's more difficult than doing step by step and building and learn from what we built before to improve it.
That's a very good point. Sometimes, you know, starting small and then building on that with the learning is It takes longer. It usually creates a smaller press release, I'm afraid, but it can actually end up with a much better product in the end, because everybody just keeps learning, and it's not just a one-off thing as well. Excellent. So let's move on and talk a bit about the biggest takeaways, because I'm pretty sure that all of you have had a lot of opportunities to learn from your projects, from your collaborations. What are the biggest things you are taking with you on your professional journey, whether you're moving elsewhere or within your organizations, whether you're thinking about the next thing? Johanna, would you like to start with that one?
Sorry, I was replying to one of the chat. Ask again. What my takeaways?
Yes, you are.
Yes. I hate to quote a mega brand, but just do it. Just be brave, and you don't need millions and millions of euros to get started. We did the Meta Gallery with less than 20,000 euros. It is a lot of money, but it's not like a huge. We could have paid, I'm sure, manyfold. So find something that suits your background and your museum, and there are technologically savvy people who want to help. Honestly, there are.
That's good to hear, and it's interesting to hear what kind of budget you were actually doing this on, because I think there's a bit of a worry that you can only do digital if you've got, you know, literally hundreds of thousands of euros available to do that. Not necessarily, as your project shows. So thank you. John, may I go to you next?
Yeah, so I think that there's two parts to that. I think one, from the kind of works point of view, it's exactly that. It is, don't be afraid. In the case of the Hollow Museum project, it was literally, from my point of view, it was a spec email. So it's like, don't be afraid sometimes. And we're all incredibly busy, and we've all got loads coming on, and I'm sure we get lots of spec emails from lots of people. Sometimes actually read those. You know, it's not always just someone trying to sell you a training program. Sometimes it is something incredibly exciting, and actually sometimes the way that we went down that project is that you just play with it, you know, and we kind of need to remember that aspect. We're playing a game here. And there was a bit of back and forth, there was a bit of conversations about what can we do this. There was a very straightforward way to do it. But then we created more content around the Hollow Museum project. So yeah, be brave enough to play in the space. And I think the one that we always forget when we talk about these, like what are the takeaways, is that obviously this was created late 2020. There wasn't a lot to be cheery about in work at that point in time. There wasn't a lot to be cheery about in terms of life at that time. What the kind of successes that IWM at that point had digitally over that period was, it was great for morale within your team. And so anybody out there that is a leader in a museum context, like this is if your team really need a win, which we really needed a win at that point, because there was a lot of losses going on across the world, then actually this was a really nice thing. Because it was shiny, it was exciting, it was new, it was engaging, it was challenging people. So never, you know, obviously we're always audience focused and we're always doing things for that public program, but never forget the fact that there's actually all those people that make it happen. And sometimes doing something new and exciting will make them excited and will give them that invigorate them to go and do other things. So that, you know, that is the thing that I think we often forget when we talk about projects, of how it's impacted our team, good and bad. Sometimes it's a bit of both, but in this case, this one was largely good.
Thank you so much, John. Good reminder again to hear about the internal impact of these projects as well. We very often think, you know, what we're doing is so audience focused, that is where we're putting all of our energies. But we have to keep in mind that, you know, there's teams involved in all of this as well. So a very good reminder. I am slightly conscious of time. I think we could kind of keep talking about this forever. So if it's okay with the panel, I would like to move on to the kind of the third question I've got on my list, and then we hopefully have time for an audience question at least. So very quickly, what would you suggest to others who are about to start their own journey of collaborating between heritage organizations on the one side and the technology sector on the other? What would be your top tips, very quickly, Brett, do you have any top tips for people who'd like to jump into something like this?
Many, I guess, but I'm aware of the clock as well. I think the one, in addition to what I've spoken about, I want to emphasize just thinking about your team and the stakeholders who are at the table making decisions. So I should have mentioned before as well, we sold our business at the end of last year to some great partners of ours, in part because I had an opportunity to join the Universal Hip Hop Museum, which is a new museum which is being built in the Bronx, as the head of innovation and experience design. And that the opportunity that we have as a museum, which won't launch until the end of 24 or the start of 25, is that we're building a museum for the next century now, and not that many people, I'm aware, have, for existing institutions, they don't have the palette that we have and the flexibility. But my big thing at the moment, hip hop is a story of innovation. It's an art form which has affected the world, but it really a form of self-expression. The museum aims to be an educational thing and a community empowerment thing. But I want young people who are still in school at the table with the decision makers, informing us at every step of the way. And I think that is a theme that everyone should be thinking about, whether you're starting a singular partnership or thinking about it from an institution point of view. Technology is just moving so quickly, and I'll just age myself, not speaking for anyone else, but in some ways I'm too old to be the decision maker on certain things. I want young people at the table. I want the great minds of tomorrow included in the process, and that goes from just education opportunities, employment opportunities, right through to how we think about hiring our team. These innovation projects in 10 years' time shouldn't be a department with an institution. They should be part of the DNA, which affects everything, because that's how the audiences of tomorrow are going to expect to engage with cultural material.
Thank you. Marion, can I ask you what your top tips might be? And then we might have time for one audience question.
So in a few words, I would say that it's important not to be in a short-term but long-term strategy, because most of the time we think it's done when it's live, but I think sometimes it's the start of the work actually, because we mentioned before the work that is important to do on marketing and communication, so people are aware that it exists and that they can use it, but also the evolution, because as we mentioned, the technologies evolves a lot, and if you have the right project that is deeply rooted in the strategy, it's good to make it evolve and not stay as it was when you launch it. So that would be my feedback.
Thank you. No, that is very true, that we are quite often thinking in project cycles, and the moment it's kind of launched, everybody moves on to something else. And I know that a lot of funders are by now starting to think in slightly longer terms as well, that the project is not finished when it goes live, but that it keeps continuing and the learning continues as well. Thank you so much. So I just had a look at all of the lovely questions in the chat, and there are a lot of very interesting things in there. There's a question from Dominic about how people find their partners and how many partners were involved. I know that there's actually elements in the report that speak to that. Dominic, if you want to have a look at the report, it tends to list all of the different partners that were involved in the individual projects. So if I could refer to that one, because there's another one I would like to briefly focus on from Georgia Manolopoulou, who is a museologist in Greece. And her question is, do you think that these innovative digital actions promote culture and education globally and facilitate international relations by enhancing the role of museums as spaces for developing cultural diplomacy, which I think is a very fascinating philosophical question almost. John. Oh, you're still muted.
Sorry. Yes, I think that is one of the most exciting things that you have here, is that we understand that museums, there's always going to be a live aspect to museums, and I don't think we should ever compromise that. And I think that I love going to museums, but we also have to understand, I always use this example, if you take, say, 3 of the great museums in the world, if you take something like the Louvre Abu Dhabi, if you take the British Museum, or you take a Smithsonian museum, I've been lucky enough and privileged enough that I've been to all of those, but it took me 39 years to get around them. digitally, I could visit them all in 90 minutes. That's something really, really exciting. That means that we start to learn about the world and we start to break down. We'll never break down all of the barriers which Brett alludes to, the barriers around digital. It's fundamentally, there's aspects of it that will never be truly accessible. But one thing that we can break down is this idea of people don't have to travel to the other side of the world to be able to engage with that place's culture. In a world that we live in just now, which is becoming incredibly fractured, culture is something that pulls us all together. We're more similar than we are different. And digital gives us an opportunity that we can share that with each other in a way that doesn't involve expensive plane, train, automobile tickets.
Thank you. And I think the role of education in that is also quite crucial, that, you know, we learn from each other, we enhance the curiosity of people from all over the world to actually go and find out more about other cultures, about other languages, about other heritage, and see that people from however many centuries past with encountering similar issues to us, and that people from other parts of the globe have exactly the same challenges to face than we do in some respects. Anybody else would like to comment on that question?
I would just say absolutely, and I think this is where, you know, there's a lot of questions around everyone's favorite topic, AI, at the moment, for the good and the bad. But I think one of the real positive use cases I can see is AI helping us to interact with museum archives, and if you've got the ability to digitize those archives, and then provide AI as a layer for people to explore those archives in ways that are personal and quick for them, I think we increase that opportunity for learning about other cultures and other communities, and that's an exciting thing. So I think if we do that well, it supports and answers the question that was being asked.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Johanna, Emma, yes, you've got your hand up.
Yes. I was going to say that, and further to, representing a national gallery, I think it would be much more interesting to share national galleries and do works or thematic exhibitions or projects that transcend national and just speak to culture. I think that would be super. I'm looking towards museum professionals. Let's do that instead of national.
That would be amazing, and I hope some of my colleagues from Europeana are on the call and kind of pricking their ears, because I can imagine they'd be really, really interested in that sort of thing. Oh, unfortunately, this is all we've got time for today. We've already overrun by 3 minutes. Apologies. I promise I won't keep you much longer. A very big thank you to all of our panelists for sharing their experiences and their expertise. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And also thank you to you, our lovely audience, for being so engaged, asking questions in the chat and contributing in that way. I am now handing back to Kristina for the closing of this event. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. And Kristina, over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you everyone again for joining us. Well, we saw today a lot of exciting projects and examples of collaborations between the museums and the digital world. And I'm sure that many, many more projects are on the way. And I believe that for museum professionals, it's really very important to share the knowledge, not to be afraid of reaching out to those who have more experience. I can say that during my work on this publication, I never was rejected, and everyone was very open for conversation. And it's vital to learn from each other and to share insights. And I do really hope that the publication and our today discussion will be useful for those who want to start experimenting or to want to find new formats of digital engagements. Enjoy the reading and I hope that we will see each other again, probably in other events. Thank you.
Just one thing, we would like to do a little group photo, if that is okay, so we can show the world who we are, what we were talking about, and whether you hopefully enjoyed it or not. If you don't want to be in the group photo, feel free to switch your camera off, but if that is okay, then Sasha, who is our lovely tech support today, together with Clara and all of the other colleagues from All Digital, is going to take a group photo. So if you could put on your photographic face, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much. Yeah, we would like to take a group photo, and maybe we will wait a few seconds more to have everyone on our pictures. So I see people are still connecting, turning on the cameras. A few seconds more. And yeah, we have 2 pages of smiley faces. That's great. Okay, so be ready, the first ones to smile in 3, 2, 1. Okay, let me do another one. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, smile. Yep, that's great. Amazing. Thank you very much for joining us today, and have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.